Chemical rockets go boom, basically controlled explosions, and nuclear-based propulsion is moving past the drawing board. But what about antimatter? 1 gram, the weight of a paperclip, has enough energy to put a ship on Mars in weeks. Okay, so let's dig deep. To actually carry that paperclip, your gas tank would weigh as much as an aircraft carrier. Can we engineer this antimatter machine? Let's find out. This is gonna be good. Okay, so engineering an antimatter engine. Kinda awesome, right? But hold that thought. Before we look at the engineering, we have to look at this odd paradox. Matter and antimatter exist in our universe. But according to physics, these whizzing particles should cancel each other out instantly. This empty dark space shouldn't exist at all, but reality favors matter much more. So the first question is, how do we find out about antimatter to begin with? Now in 1928, Paul Dirac was trying to make 2 different sets of physics rules play nice. Don't worry, I'm going to get to why this is important. General relativity and quantum mechanics. He was looking for a way to track how an electron moves when it's pushed to near light speeds. He ended up with an equation that worked perfectly, but it had a weird quirk. It's like asking for the square root of 4. You get 2, but you also get -2. Dirac's math did the same thing. It described a normal electron, but it also described something that looked like an electron, but had a positive charge. Now, most physicists back then figured it was just a math ghost, something math allowed but reality did not. Dirac didn't. He figured that if the math allowed it, the universe probably built it. Now, that's not always the case, but in this case, he was right. And in 1932, this guy named Carl Anderson caught a positron in a cloud chamber. If you look up this experiment online, it's super neat and I encourage you to check it out. So anyways, it was identical to the electron, but it curved the wrong way when it hit a magnetic field. And this was the proof. Every piece of matter we know has a mirror version. And when they meet, they don't just react, they annihilate. They turn 100% of their mass into energy. Okay, cool. So now we've seen antimatter, but what's next? How do we harness this elusive substance? Well, you can't just go to a vein of this stuff on an asteroid. You have to build it. And at CERN, they use the Antimatter Factory, which is really just a fancy name for a subatomic car crash. They take protons, get them moving at 99.9% the speed of light, and slam them into a block of iridium. Why iridium? Well, it's dense and it doesn't melt very easily. And when those protons hit the metal at those speeds, the energy is so violent it actually condenses into new particles. Sometimes, if you're lucky, an antiproton is in the wreckage. Okay, so the real question, how many antiprotons do we get? For every million protons you fire at iridium, you might get 1 antiproton back. So as of 2026, we're still talking about picograms here. That's a trillionth of a gram. All the antimatter we've ever made as a species wouldn't have been enough energy to boil a single cup of coffee. So we can calm down about the whole black hole doomsday scenario. We aren't producing fuel, we're barely scratching the surface of what's possible. But let's put how long this stuff takes to make to the side for a second, because we really haven't addressed the bigger questions. If we actually manage to collect a gram of it, how do we use it? Let's look at the engineering. Now, when you mix matter and antimatter, it doesn't just create a clean push, it creates a mess of pions and gamma rays. Now, there are 2 ways people think we can make this work. One is the thermal method, in which we use the heat from the reaction to warm up hydrogen and shoot it out of a nozzle. It's efficient, but the heat is so high it would melt the engine. The other way is the beam core rocket. You'd use massive magnetic fields to steer those pions out the back at about 33% the speed of light. Here's a tiny issue though. Gamma rays are basically X-rays but steroids mode. They go through everything. To keep the astronauts and travelers from being fried, you'd need shielding so thick and so heavy that the ship would be too heavy to move. This brings us to 2026. There was this experiment called the base step. Cleo Bryant has an awesome clip on this, by the way. But for the first time, they put antimatter in a container and drove it across a parking lot on a truck. To keep the fuel from touching the walls, which would be an instant explosion, you need something called a penning trap. It's a magnetic cage. So here's what it takes to hold 100 antiprotons. A 1-ton box full of superconducting magnets, liquid helium to keep those magnets at absolute zero, and a vacuum that is cleaner than the space between planets. And this is something to think about because it took over 1 ton of equipment just to hold 100 atoms. For our super speed spaceship, we need grams. A single gram has 600 sextillion particles. If the weight to fuel ratio stays the same, you'd need essentially a tank the size of a planet to hold a single gram of fuel. That fuel is basically weightless, but the bottle weighs more than the ship. Yes, I think that's a good metaphor. Okay, so there are 3 big things that keep us from scaling this up right now. First, it's the vacuum. No vacuum is perfect. If you got a gram of antimatter and one stray oxygen atom leaks in and it hits the fuel, the reaction creates heat. Heat kills the superconducting magnets. The cage drops and the fuel hits the wall and you just set off a 40 kiloton explosion in your own cargo bay. That's a Hiroshima-sized blast because of one microscopic leak. Second, gravity. We used to wonder if antimatter fell up. In 2023, tests like Alpha G showed it falls down, which is kind of awesome if you think about it because antimatter plays with the same laws of physics as regular matter. Anyways, that means the fuel is always trying to sink to the bottom of your magnetic trap. Any vibration, any turn the ship makes, or any bump in the road, your magnets have to be perfect 24/7 to keep the stuff from touching the sides. Third is the sheer cost. Estimates for a single gram of antihydrogen are around $62.5 trillion. That is more than the GDP of the biggest countries on the earth combined. We're catching raindrops with tweezers and paying millions per drop. So, is it actually feasible? Can we use antimatter in any conventional way? If you're talking about medicine, yes. We use PET scans every day. We let positrons exist for a millisecond inside patients to find cancer, and it works perfectly because we don't have to store it. So the discovery of antimatter has already played an incredible role for humanity. But for power or space travel, no, but with an extra but. It could be used as a catalyst or spark plug for other engine types, but that still requires some really hard engineering. Today though, we spend way more energy making it than we ever get back, and we spend millions to move a handful of atoms on a truck. Antimatter is the most energy-dense stuff we know, but we don't have a way to build a tank for it that doesn't weigh as much as a mountain. Until someone finds a way to store mirror matter without massive magnets, it's just a very cool and very dangerous idea. I'm a new YouTuber and apparently I'm legally required to say this. If you like this kind of non-hype physics stuff, liking, commenting, and subscribing actually helps the algorithm find other weirdos like us. So let me know in the comments, would you ever get on a ship carrying a 40 kiloton antimatter bomb for a fuel tank? I'll see you in the next one.